Today's sponsor is Coastal Crypto. Coastal Crypto can be found at coastalcryptomining.com via the affiliate link down in the description below. They don't want to take up a lot of your time, and neither do I, because I want to get into the video. They are here to help miners find parts. If you're looking for ASICs or even GPUs or any other parts, be sure to check them out. Use promo code SOAT at checkout for 5% off any purchase on the website. Digital euro could be more popular beyond EU's borders. Now, this is an interesting one, and I think this applies to US as well, right? Which we'll talk about as we go through this. But authorities in the EU, US, and other jurisdictions need to compare notes on central bank digital currencies to regulate them better, according to the ECB chief. A digital euro could well be more popular beyond the European Union's borders, according to the European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde. The digital version of the euro should be borderless, and it should be regulated and properly supervised, Lagarde said, responding to a question while speaking at the Atlantic Council Frankfurt Forum on U.S.-European geoeconomics on Wednesday. But it can't facilitate cross-border payments, facilitate cross-border payments in a big way, which is why between the United States authorities, the European authorities, and others beyond that, we need to compare notes, she said. The ECB is halfway through a 2-year investigation into a digital euro for retail payments, and although it has yet to make a decision on issuing one, the EU Commission responsible for proposing new legislation is preparing a digital euro bill. The ECB has also picked 5 payment providers to work on prototypes for digital euro apps. Although Lagarde did not directly address the implications of a digital euro potentially being adopted by a country as an official currency in the same way that El Salvador and Ecuador use the US dollar, the ECB has previously addressed the risks of currency substitution associated with the digital euro when used beyond EU borders. Similar design features would have to be applied to use a digital euro by non-residents. This would stop a digital euro replacing other forms of investment and facilitating currency substitution in countries outside the euro area, Fabio Panetta, an ECB executive board member, said in a 2021 speech. In any event, international cooperation on design, cross-border use, and interoperability would be key to reap the potential benefits of CBDCs for cross-border payments while addressing risks to the international financial system. Responding to a question on why EU residents would be interested in a digital euro when digital payments are already widespread in the bloc, where cash usage is on the decline, Lagarde reiterated the ECB's stance that a central bank digital currency should be something the ECB should be ready to make available if people want it. Now, obviously, if people want it is a curious question. And then we do have, obviously, with everything that's come about with like stable coins primarily based around the US dollar and the access of stable coins to essentially anybody in the entire world, it does provide an interesting problem for a lot of nation states, right? Or a lot of different countries, because you basically have this position or are in this position where your currency is not the desired currency. Why? Because the reserve currency is and always has been the US dollar. So if all of your citizens essentially exchange your currency for a stable coin based on the US dollar, then obviously that provides essentially destabilization within your own economy. And yes, I think that from an investment standpoint, if you do move towards a CBDC and you don't have essentially restrictions, based around who can and cannot purchase it, then you do end up in a position where it can destabilize other economies or even the economy that is participating within. But that's kind of what's supposed to happen with cryptocurrency. So when I do read this, I do think I shift my position a tad because I'm always thinking about things, right? And there are clear advantages to a CBDC that could come about from a CBDC, right? Specifically, these kind of the access to stronger currencies for individuals in other countries. The thing is, though, right, if we look at like if these countries, like if the U.S. would allow this type of activity, and the answer may be no. I think the U.S. will, because of the strength of the dollar is based on other people, basically other countries purchasing the dollar. But I don't think the U.S. would allow for, like, for example, the EU to do the same thing, if that makes sense. But if the EU did, or globally, CBDCs allowed pretty much anybody cross-border to, purchase them, then we end up in a position where maybe there is some advantage to a CBDC, right? And this is kind of me thinking. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, as well as the live chat. Now, we have a ton of other CBDCs coming out too, but we have some partnerships as well. So you have the central banks of Israel, Norway, and Sweden teaming up now to explore a retail CBDC. Results of the project, run by the Bank of International Settlements, are expected in the first quarter of 2023. The central banks of Israel, Norway, and Sweden have teamed up with the Bank for International Settlements to explore how central bank digital currencies can be used for international retail and remittance payments, BIS announced on Wednesday. The BIS is an association of 61 central banks from around the world and has innovation hubs set up in multiple locations focused on exploring the applications of new financial technologies, including CBDCs, which are digital versions of countries' sovereign currencies. The new collaboration, called Project Icebreaker, involves the BIS Innovation Hub's Nordic Center, and it will test key features and technical aspects of interlinking different domestic CBDC systems, according to a press statement. Cross-border payments continue to be plagued by high cost, low speed, limited access, and insufficient transparency, BIS said. The International Monetary Fund has said CBDCs could cut costs for international payments, while earlier this week, the BIS Innovation Hub announced the success of a project involving multiple Asian CBDCs that facilitated over $22 million in foreign exchange transactions. Project Icebreaker will test near-instant retail CBDC payments across borders at lower costs. A final report on the project is expected in the first quarter of 2023. Quote, this is a first-of-a-kind experiment. Will dig deeper, or this first-of-a-kind experiment, will dig deeper into the technology, architecture, and design choices and trade-offs and explore related policy questions, end quote, said Behu San, or Shah, head of BIS Innovation Hub Nordic Center. These learnings will be invaluable for central banks thinking about implementing CBDCs for cross-border payments. Project Icebreaker will test near-instant retail CBDC payments across borders at lower costs. A final report on the project is expected in the first quarter of 2023, like we read earlier. And it just basically repeats the same thing that is talking about. So what is the BIS? Should we be concerned about them controlling all of the CBDCs? And to a certain extent, yes. So we're going to flip on you, of course. We talked about, where could we see some benefits from a CBDC? Cross-border payments, basically destabilizing nation states and giving power to the individual for these cross-border payments. But then, bing, bang, boom, what do we see? We see this Bank for International Settlements kind of controlling the research for CBDCs. And at the end of the day, we see further centralization, not just down to the federal government of the geographical location that you decide to live in, but now, on top of that, basically a single entity that controls basically an association of 61 different central banks. So you're consolidating all of this technology that CBDCs will be built on into essentially one entity. Further centralization, going the opposite direction of what I would prefer personally, as it adheres to, of course, the principles of cryptocurrency as set forth in the white paper for Bitcoin, and of course, as set forth in basically manifestos like the Cypherpunk Manifesto. So this is kind of where I sit as far as it goes, but I want to give all the sides to all the stories so that everybody is up to date as much as possible and try to treat it as fairly and make my biases known as clearly as possible. That's what I try to do here. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Crypto Mining Show. You can check out the full episode here or more crypto content down here. Also, I'd like you to check out my locals page at sonofatech.locals.com, where you can become a member for free or choose to be a $5 a month supporter that unlocks additional content.